What's up, everyone? Today we have a super exciting interview with Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. We go into everything from the epidemic on sleep deprivation, how it impacts kids, the suicide rates that correlate with it. We get into issues that families should be aware of. We talk a little bit about gun safety, the importance of getting your kids around them and making sure they understand the harm, but also what they're here for and what we can protect our families with. We talk a lot about being the sheepdog and not the sheep. It's a super, super great interview. Beth, you want to talk about what's going on in this one?
We also talked about some really important topics: how to grow our faith, our spiritual walk, and how to become grounded as a family, how to stay true to our values as home educators and homeschool families.
I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you inside. All righty. So I'm already excited for this interview from just the little discussion we've had beforehand. If you could just give us a little bit of better about a background of you, kind of who you are, your accomplishments in the army and the military, and just kind of for anyone that doesn't know who you are, just a little bit of a background with
All
yourself.
right. Hey, before I begin, I want to introduce Charlie here.
Let's do it.
Yeah, Charlie is my service dog. I'm a veteran. My ears are shot out and getting worse. And Charlie lets know the alarm goes off in the morning. Can't sleep with the hearing aids in. Charlie lets know somebody's knocking on the door. Charlie's a good guy. You turn him upside down and he's a skunk. See, but you'll see him sitting in my lap here, and that'll let you know what he's all about. And we'll talk about being God's faithful dog. About, when we get there, we will understand things we cannot comprehend. But right now, most of what God does, we can't comprehend. And most of what I do, Charlie can't comprehend. But he obeys and he loves, and that's all God asks of us, is to love God and love people, to obey to the best of our doggy ability. And we'll talk about that later on down the line. But I'll introduce Charlie. I enlisted in the Army in 1974. I was 18 years old. I actually I dropped out of high school in my senior year. I completed high school, but in January, February, March, April, in the Panhandle of Nebraska, I worked on a Wildcat oil rig, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most dangerous thing I have ever done. Those guys couldn't spell OSHA, let alone comply. Uh, and uh, and I turned 18. I was facing another winter on the oil rigs, and I joined the Army. And I became a paratrooper. It's infinitely safer than working on the oil rigs. That laid the foundation. 12-hour days, 7 days a week, month after month. It just laid a foundation of hard work and danger and fatigue and pushing through. I love the Army. I had a goal to go to OCS. I married my high school sweetheart. I tell people that she was 17 when she married me and came over to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and married Private First Class Grossman in 1975, 50 years ago. And she's been with me all along. My goal was to take good care of her. I went to officer candidate school, got 2 years of school on my own time, the night school, and tested out. Young sergeant, then a young lieutenant, Army Ranger, West Point psychology professor. Did a lot of infantry jobs. Got selected to go teach at West Point. I'm not a graduate, but it was so cool to teach there. My first book on killing came out really as a result of my grad school and everything else. As a young private, we had Vietnam veterans all around us, and we wanted to know what combat was going to be like, and they wouldn't say. It really is a taboo topic. It's a very intimate, taboo topic. It's like asking about your sex life, people aren't going to tell you. But if some medical researcher in a scholarly study, you might tell them. So fast forward 10 years, Captain Grossman, Army Ranger, infantry officer, West Point psych professors writing a book, and they will tell me, and they will tell me things that never told anybody before. And there's a burden that comes with that. You got to get that message out. And so I wrote my first book on killing. It's a Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list, been translated into 9 languages, international bestseller, well over 500,000 copies sold. But the follow-on book was really more important. It was on combat. And I realized what was really at the heart of combat was not killing. For those who, and it's a worthy study, but for those who have prepared themselves, it's not that big a deal. This talks about PTSD and how to avoid it, and physiological arousal and how the body deals with it. And the ultimate follow-on that came out just about a year ago was on hunting, because you can't understand killing or combat without understanding hunting. And we think that the dynamic issue is fight or flight, but the dynamic issue is, am I the hunter or am I the hunted? Throughout the history of our species, we've been in the middle of the food chain. There's things that hunted us and things that we hunted. But it's no fun to be hunted. We're never truly happy when we're hunted. And the left, we'll talk more about that, has chosen to be the hunted and not the hunter. They're the sheep and not the sheepdog. Well, we've chosen to be the sheepdog, God's
Mhm.
faithful dog. And we can talk more about that. Both my books on killing and on combat at Marine Corps Commandant's required reading list for over 20 years and translated in many languages. This book received a Ukraine Book of the Year award. And in May and June of 70, in May and June of 24, I was in Ukraine training their troops. I spent my summer vacation in the war zone. But the follow-on, really the most important book I've ever written is on spiritual combat. And it talks about being God's faithful sheepdog. And the sequel to that book is on spiritual warfare. And then we wrote a great book, the wonderful co-author called Bulletproof Marriage, a 90-day devotional, Christian
Love that.
Award finalist. And all of that flowed from my first book is on killing. I retired from the Army in December 97. I've been on the road ever since, 100, 200 days a year on the road. I get home and, I tell everybody conjugal visit, clean underwear back on the road, and I've been doing that for ever since 1998, full time, and loving it. I think I'm the only person ever to be certified to train law enforcement in all 50 states. I've trained all of our Tier 1 spec ops, over a dozen foreign nations, and truly love it. I train school safety and mental health providers at all levels. God's just taken me every step of the way and put me in places, but I'm a huge fan of the homeschool movement. And I think it is one of the God's blessings to our nation and one of the answers to the defining challenge of the age. I hold the U.S. government trademark for the term sheepdog.
Ooh, really?
And the defining question is, are we the sheepdog or are we the sheep? And I'm afraid our schools have been taken over by the sheep.
That has been taken. And that's one thing before we keep going, I want to get into real quick
Yeah.
is you said that, the left has taken on the role and just rolling over to showing their stomach. And when we look into the school system, we see all of these crazy ideologies and all of these just values being pushed down the kids' throats. As a homeschooler, a former homeschooler, and as current homeschoolers working with them, I think it's really important that we don't force a certain way of thinking onto our kids, but we show them the reason why we hold these values as a nation, as a family. And it's kind of scary to think that the people that we are perceived experts that we're pushing our kids to in the school system, and we think, hey, they're going to be doing the best for them, are going to be putting these toxic thoughts into their head. So as a homeschooling parent, um, what would you say to them that they can to allow them to maybe get that sheepdog mentality into their kids rather than having a kid who is going to roll over and show their stomach?
Right. So that's it. The left has chosen to be the hunted and
Mhm.
not the hunter. They're the sheep and not the sheepdog. They hate guns, and all you got to do is cooperate with the bad man, and maybe he won't hurt me. But there's a billion cattle on the planet. There's a billion sheep on the planet. Being a sheep, being cattle is a survival mechanism, but you survive just to be consumed,
Mm.
as opposed to being the dog. What do you want to be? You want to be the dog or the cattle dog or the cattle? You want to be the sheep dog or the sheep? Well, the thing is, you're never truly biologically happy when you're the hunted.
Mm-mm.
You're filled with self-loathing. They're filled with self-loathing and unhappiness because they have chosen to be the hunted, to roll over and expose their belly, as opposed to say, I am triumphant, I am in God, to live as Christ and die as gain. I believe in protecting myself and protecting my nation. So they're filled with self-loathing and they're all about deconstructing. deconstruct the family, deconstruct the nation, deconstruct religion. Well, deconstruct ultimately means to destroy, to break it down to component elements and destroy it. And so this self-loathing in the left, this whole business, they were the ones that were submitting to communism. They fully submitted to communism because it was evil. And their only response was to roll over and expose their belly. It's the only response they have and now they're submitting to Islam. Islam murders gays. Islam will murder you because you're gay. Islam oppresses women. But they know, Trump is not going to kill them. But Islam, if you burn the Quran, they will kill you. And so they submit to that. For all practical purposes, they have become Islamic. If you burn the Quran, if you doodle a picture of the Prophet, they'll come kill you. And the left's response to evil is to roll over and expose their belly because they've accepted the fact that I am the hunted and not the hunter. I am the sheep and not the sheepdog. And that is a survival mechanism. But is that the one we want for our children? And so I think, the fact that Islam hates dogs should be an indicator that they're not on the right side. So, but this left is filled with self-loathing. And so they have to destroy everything and submit to the greatest evil they can find. They submitted to communism, not in spite of the tens of millions that Mao and Stalin murdered, but because of the tens of millions. They submit to Islam, not in spite of the evil, but because of the evil. And so what we've got to do is teach our children that to believe in God and country and to believe in the old values that are strong. The old that is strong does not wither, and the deep roots are not touched by the frost. And that's straight out of Tolkien. And those are the old virtues and the old values that sustain us. And that's why I'm such a fan of homeschooling. It's to give them, here's the values, here's the options you choose. They have all practical purpose. They become Islamic. They've submitted. They won't burn the Quran. Oh, that's provocation. They will never doodle a picture of the Prophet. Oh, that's provocation. And for all practical purposes, they've submitted. They've become Islamic. And just like they submitted to communism. And so teach our children to be the sheepdog. I think one of the best things we can do is martial arts, sports. I think a great thing we can do is to defend our houses of worship. People say, well, won't God protect you from violence? Well, won't God protect you from fire? Throw away the fire extinguisher, throw away the fire exit signs, turn off the fire sprinkler system. Show us your faith in God. That's not how it works. God gave us fire sprinklers and fire exits and fire extinguishers to protect us from fire. And if you don't use those things and bad things happen, don't blame God. And God gave us the tools and put us in a nation where we can protect our families and protect our house of worship. And if you don't use those things, it's like not having fire protection. It's insane. But that's the left because they have chosen to roll over and expose their belly to the bad man. And so we choose a life of preparation. We choose a life that says, I will be fruitful and multiply in this world, not self-loathing. But we're told to submit to our authority on earth, which is our nation. Praise God, we live in this nation, defend this nation, stand up for this nation, and be educated and informed about this nation.
Mhm.
But the dominant threat of our age, we're being blindsided, is a global epidemic of sleep deprivation. And I want every homeschool parent, every homeschool child to understand that sleep is a biological need, but it's a biological blind spot. Your body needs four things to survive. You need air, you need water, you need food, you need sleep. You will die from lack of sleep before you die from lack of food. But your body is not good at making you get enough sleep. It's a biological blind spot. So there's nothing macho, there's nothing tough about going a night without sleep. Any 10-year-old girl in a slumber party can do it. Now try to make that kid go that long without food. Try to make them go that long without food. They will eat you. It's not possible for that 10-year-old to go that long without food. They can go without sleep. So if there's something interesting or exciting like video games and social media, sleep gets pushed to the side. And so understand this global epidemic of sleep deprivation number one, is a key factor in mental illness. 24 hours without sleep, and you are the equivalent of legally drunk, beyond legally drunk, 0.10 blood alcohol level after 24 hours. Now, if somebody acted habitually drunk in the absence of alcohol, we will call that mentally ill. On the second day without sleep, you are flat out of it. You are aggressive, you're irrational, you're hostile. On the third day without sleep, you are, for all practical purposes, schizophrenic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School or SEER School will tell you about hallucinations on the third day without sleep. You are indistinguishable from schizophrenia on the third day without sleep.
It's
And
crazy.
so if you think the world is hostile, if you think the world is aggressive and crazy, you're right, because we're in the middle of a global epidemic of sleep deprivation. The video games, the social media, the movies, they're all designed to steal our sleep. The head of Netflix said their competitor is sleep. They don't care that they're killing people. They just want to steal your sleep. And so what we need to do is understand this threat to our children. It's a key factor in suicide. Suicide has exploded around the planet. Now, here's the key on suicide. Right now, it is physically impossible for you to take your life. The drive to self-preservation is too powerful. But alcohol inhibits the drive to self-preservation. You got all these problems, you add alcohol, and suicide becomes possible. Alcohol is very often a key component in suicide. But sleep deprivation works exactly the same way. Sleep deprivation inhibits the drive to self-preservation. And so we've got teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled in just the last decade. And when we've got globally, teen suicides have exploded, quickly approaching the number one killer of our kids. Now, one of the best studies on suicide said not only is sleep deprivation a key component in suicide, it's the most remediable factor. We can't do anything about your relationships or your finances, but we can sleep right now. Sleep deprivation is a key factor in traffic death, the number one killer of American teens. And so if you want to protect your child, of course, sleep deprivation is like being drunk. The National Traffic Society says that alcohol and sleep deprivation are two major factors in traffic accidents. And then finally, sleep deprivation is the key component in a global epidemic of opiate overdoses. Why opiates? Well, sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. And when you're sleep deprived, the addictive power of opiates is far greater. So, doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill. If you don't need a pill, you need more sleep. Sleep deprivation is also a key factor in obesity. And if you're worried about childhood obesity. So I do a lot of school safety presentations. And I did East Texas School Safety Summit. I said, we're going to talk about protecting your kids from violence. But odds are good you haven't had a kid murdered. Unfortunately, you probably got a lot of mental illness. You probably had traffic deaths, number one killer of teens. You probably got suicides and drug overdoses. You want to walk out of here and save a kid's life? Sleep. What can we do about the mental illness? Sleep. What do we do about the suicides and the traffic deaths? Sleep. So teach your kids three things. And I have an article accepted in a scholarly journal as on their opinions page, and also accepted in a major parenting magazine. I'll be sending a copy to Beth and David, and it'll be available to
Mhm.
them about this global epidemic of sleep deprivation. And as parents, we can do three things. Number one, most important, teach your children the amount of sleep that they need. Now, David's got a great story. At his age, at that point in time, his mom found out that he needed 10 hours of sleep. Now, that varies by age. By
Mhm.
the time we become adults, minimum of 7 hours of sleep, minimum. As teenagers, minimum of 8 hours. But David, you get a great example. Your mom set the mark for 10 hours. How'd that work for you about the baseball and the weight and the size? That's a
It
great story.
was it was probably the number one contributor to me because, like I was sharing with you before, I didn't hit puberty till I was 17. So I was undersized. I want to be a professional baseball player, and all the doctors were trying to get me on human growth hormone. My mom was very against it, so she started doing deep research, and she learned that for someone in my situation, 10 hours is going to actually start producing the human growth hormone within your body itself. And we made a point to, or she made a point, I didn't have much of a say in it, to be quite honest. But it was 10 hours no matter what. So if I fell asleep at 12 o'clock at night, I was waking up at 10. If I fell asleep at 8, 9, 7, whatever it was, we reversed back to 10 hours. And in a couple months of doing that, I instantly started to grow to where doctors said I was going to be at the very tallest 5'6". I ended up being 6'1". So it's a matter of, it's a matter though, and like you said, what are some things though? You said the sleep, but you were even talking about the total darkness. Can you kind
Yeah.
of expand on that?
Well, when my second grade teacher told us cigarettes kill people, I went home and hid my dad's cigarettes. There's a generation that doesn't understand the battle against tobacco. My dad started smoking in 1941 when he was 5 years old. He said he plunked a nickel on top of the counter of the general store, couldn't even look over the counter, plunked a nickel on top of the counter, 5 years old, bought a pack of Bull Durham tobacco and rolling papers, started smoking 5 years old. Hey, candy rots your teeth, right? Cigarettes are good for you. They believe that. Camel had ads that more doctors smoke camels, and Salem said, as your dentist, I recommend Salem cigarettes. So they believed it. The tobacco industry fought tooth and nail for one thing, to sell tobacco to children. But when our second grade teacher told us cigarettes kill people, that's when we began to defeat the tobacco industry. The video game, the head of Netflix said their competitor is sleep. They don't care they're killing people. They just want to sell their product to your children. And so the amount of hours, and then number two is sleep in total darkness. Make it as dark as you can. We're biologically designed to sleep. I'm a huge science geek. I spend a lot of time every day online with the latest science stuff. Major study in the sleep lab, totally dark room, bathroom out, and the door is shut. The light coming under the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that you need. And so make it as dark as you can and teach them to sleep with a sleep mask. One of the best life hacks you will ever get. You may not get one more minute of sleep, get quality sleep in the dark. And number three, so important, cut off caffeine shortly after lunch. We're in the middle of a global epidemic of caffeine abuse and caffeine addiction, with mega doses of caffeine being fed to our children. And so these three things, that's an 80% solution right there. The amount of hours that your children need as a minimum. Track it backwards from their wake up time. And that's when we go to sleep. Or like you said, as a homeschooler, track it forward from your
Mm-hmm.
sleep time. And that's how much sleep you get. And remember, the 8 hours as teenagers is minimum. Your mom shot for 10. Look what it did for you. The growth hormones and the other stuff, eight's the minimum. Our standards should be a little higher than that. Yeah. Number two, sleep in the dark. And number three, cut off that doggone caffeine shortly after lunch. There's good research that shows that coffee and tea are pretty good for us, but it's about taking it at appropriate hours and switching to decaf after lunch. And so those three, that's 80% solution right there. There's so many other things we can do. But if our teachers taught that, you want to walk out that door and save kids' lives and defeat obesity and mental illness and suicide and traffic deaths and opiate overdoses, boom. That's what we can do. We educate a generation. And that's one of the two defining challenges of our age that I teach military and law enforcement. And I tell them, look, if somebody showed up at work drunk, you'd fire him, you'd kick his tail. If he shows up to work sleep deprived, because I played the new video game all night long, dude. It was so cool. That's not funny. That's not acceptable. That's like showing up work drunk. You need your tail kicked. You got a sick baby at home, stayed up with a sick baby, man. We got you covered. You played games. You're on social media all night long. You need your tail kicked. It's just like being drunk. And I have an audience of 100 cops or 500 soldiers. And I said, a lot of you look at me right now like a deer in the headlights. You said, dude, you're talking straight to me, but you didn't know. But now you know, and you know I'm right. And you can't keep doing business this way. And so we're educating a generation, going to turn the tide, just like tobacco, or, every piece of technology had to be digested. We had automobiles for 50 years before some genius said kids shouldn't be driving these things. I mean, if you could look over the dashboard, you could drive a car legally. And then we said, wait a minute. We had firearms for hundreds of years before, kids shouldn't be buying these. We had tobacco for hundreds of years before we said, no, kids shouldn't be able to buy this stuff. And it's the same way with the cell phones and the social media and the video games, to control your children's access to these things. And dear Lord, make sure they get enough sleep. But the other defining challenge of the age of military and law enforcement is the idea of post-traumatic growth. The idea that the bad things in life can make you stronger. To live as Christ and die as gain, right? Nietzsche said what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, but Nietzsche stole that from the Bible. Romans chapter 5, we glory in tribulation. We've got a generation that thinks that something bad happened, I have PTSD, I'm broken. When the truth is, the vast, vast majority of veterans are not suicidal. They have post-traumatic growth. The vast majority of the veterans do not have PTSD at that post-traumatic growth. And so let's go back to being the sheepdog or the sheep. Now, we at West Point we talked about stage fright, right? So we got a musician. She says, "Oh, every time I go on stage, my tummy is rumbling and my heart is pounding. I don't think I can do it anymore." Well, that's the sheep, right? Then the rock star says, "Every time I go on stage, my heart's pounding, my guts are rumbling. I wish I could do it for the rest of my life." There's the sheepdog. Are you the hunter or the hunted? You see, the sheep says, "Oh, I'm the hunted. I got to flee from that." The sheepdog says, "I'm the hunter. I seek those things. I want those things." So the same physiological arousal with two completely different responses. Are you the hunter? Is the adrenaline mean you're in the hunt and you're hunting the prey? Or are you the hunted? And the adrenaline means I'm in danger and I've got to run, I've got to flee, I've got to roll over and expose my belly. And so we raise a generation that when the adrenaline starts pumping, they said this is a good thing.
Mm.
And then how to control it. One of the major tools to control the sympathetic nervous system is a big drink of water. So a big drink of water is a tool that brings the sympathetic nervous system down and sends a biological message that says we're safe. Sympathetic, parasympathetic, two segments of the autonomic nervous system, right? But it's autonomic, but we can bring it under conscious control. So I give the example. I trained the International Association of Hospital Security and Safety just recently. I said, you got a security guard that got punched in the ER, got punched in the nose in the emergency room. The next day he walks in the ER and his heart starts pounding. All right, this is not PTSD. It's normal. How you deal with it will decide whether or not it becomes PTSD.
So
And
can I add something real quick? So as
yeah,
a homeschooling family, something you want to say that I'm gonna kind of back. I read a book when I was a kid called Mind Gym, and it talked about just performance in athletes, and it would show how there's a 15% increase in performance when the stakes are high, or a 15% decrease in performance when the stakes are high. And what the book talked about was reframing your mind around the situation. So, as homeschooling parents, when we have our kids and they're going into, let's just say they have a championship baseball game, something small but something they can use. How can we teach them to become that sheepdog by reframing their mindset around the situation and understanding that what you're feeling is actually normal and it's your response to the feeling that is going
oh,
to dictate the success or the failure that you're going to achieve.
that's so good. And that's the challenge. And so in a nutshell, what post-traumatic stress disorder is you re-experience the event and you try to not think about it.
Mm.
Systematically flee it. But what you got to do is you have to make peace with the memory. So we learn the tools, we learn the breathing exercise. Your breathing right now is autonomic, it's not under conscious control. But as human beings, we can bring it under conscious control. Everybody stop, breathe in through the nose, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, hold it, hold it, hold it, let it out, let it out, let it out, let it out. Hold it, hold it, hold it. What'd you just do? You just brought your breathing under conscious control and the whole autonomic nerves. Charlie will never learn to do that. He's a smart dog, but Charlie will never learn to control his breathing. He can't, but we can. That's what makes us human. And so that big swig of water. And if you have trouble, the doctor's got a whole bag full of tricks to separate the memory from the emotion. And first off, you don't get PTSD, you get post-traumatic growth. Even if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, we're really, really good at treating it. The docs have a whole bag full of tricks to separate the memory from the emotion and come out the other end with post-traumatic growth. And so I think it's about teaching the kids that when you start getting those butterflies and you start getting that response, there's tools, the breathing exercise, stop and breathe from the youngest age, the big swig of water. You know, across the Orient, anytime anybody's troubled, they hand them a glass of water. It's just part of their culture. Anytime your child is troubled, oh, you want a glass of water? Yeah, I want a glass of water. They take that glass of water, they regain control. You teach them from the youngest days to control the autonomic nervous system, reach out. You know, one of the first things we learn is to get potty trained, to not mess ourselves. Now, if
Hmm.
you ever house train a dog or potty train a kid, that's hard, but it makes us human. You know, we learn to control those things. And then we learn to control our temper. We can't punch little Johnny out when we're 5 years old. We learn, no, no, we can't do that. But it's about taking these things and bringing them under control, and that sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, channeling it appropriately and controlling it. And of course, the Bible, my reading today was in the book of James, and he talks so much about controlling your temper and controlling yourself. And the essence of Christianity is self-control and self-discipline. And we're told that over and over again, a man without self-control is like a city without walls. And so teach our children from the youngest age the tools to control the autonomic nervous system, the breathing, the big swig of water, and then how to channel that appropriately, and how it will make you stronger, like that rock star, looks forward to the heart pounding.
Yep.
People pay big money for that. Roller coaster rides and bungee jumping and parachuting and scary movies and action movies. People pay big money for that to have that sympathetic nervous system arousal. It's just a matter of not being frightened by it, learning to control it, learning to channel it. And it starts by offering them a drink of water, by offering to tell them to stop and breathe, and by telling them that what's happening to them is normal. In combat in World War II, now I began in the 1990s by interviewing hundreds of World War II and Vietnam vets. And one study on World War II said half of all veterans of intense combat admit they wet themselves. And about 1 out of 5, 20% of the World War II veterans of intense combat would admit that they messed themselves. Two different World War II veterans told me, 20% admitted they wet them and they messed themselves. All that proves 80% were what? Liars.
Liars.
It's not for us to call them liars. The point is that these are normal biological responses. So I tell fire and EMS, I tell first responders, cops, and ER, I said, when somebody's wet themselves, somebody's messed themselves in a traffic accident, you tell them that's your body's natural response. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. You can literally save somebody from a lifetime of shame and despair. But just saying that's your body's natural response. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. So those are all kind of woven into my book, on combat and on killing and on hunting, and the defining challenge of the age is the left that's chosen to be the hunted and not the hunter, that chosen to roll over and expose their belly, and we're never truly happy. They're miserable. The left is miserable. They're self-loathing. They're self-hating. And they simply submit to the greatest evil and roll over and expose their belly because they don't have any other option. And guns are evil, and fighting back is evil, and just cooperate with the bad man and he won't hurt you. Well, the bad man is coming to kill you and the bad man is coming to hurt you. And yes, being sheep is, there's a billion cattle and a billion sheep and less than a billion dogs on the planet. But which one do you want to be? I want to be God's faithful sheepdog. I want to be
Without
God's
a
dog.
doubt.
There's a yappy little alarm dog online. The burglars fear that yappy alarm dog more than anything else. There's the attack dog who's got his fangs with him all the time and is ready to intervene at a time of great need. We've got the guard dog that just protects their house. And if you come in this house, you made a big mistake. But being that faithful dog, and Charlie here, he doesn't understand much, and we don't understand much. When we get there, we will comprehend things we can't imagine. But right now, we understand God about as well as Charlie understands me. You understand? Charlie don't understand what we're doing, what we're saying right now. But God Yeah, I see every dumb thing that Charlie does. I still love him, and God sees every stupid thing we do, and He still loves us and forgives us. And all He asks is our obedience and our love to the best of our doggy ability. But Will Rogers wrote, I talk about this in the book on spiritual warfare, the sequel on spiritual combat. Will Rogers said, if you get to thinking you're a man of some importance, try telling another man's dog what to do. Now, if you ever did that, the dog would look at you and the dog would talk. Here's what he'd say. So I don't know much. I'm just a dog. I know this. I'm not your dog.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. When we're God's dog, the evil one comes to you. You look in the eye and you tell him, I'm not your dog. I'm not your dog. And that's one of the greatest values of being God's dog is to live as Christ and die as gain. And we literally our fear of death. My gravestone has already been made. I have no future to use it. And at the top of the gravestone is well, first off, there's a joke. My gravestone is a bench. And I love benches. Benches say you're welcome here. We want you here. My yard has benches in it. My military units, we put in benches. You're welcome here. But across the top of it, it says, "Have a seat, weary traveler." And that's it's agape love. Well,
Mhm.
you're welcome here. And there's an asterisk. And then you look down, and on the front of the bench, it says, "Yes, asterisk, yes, this is an engraved invitation." And so, and so, but then the next thing is John 3:16. Oh, how many people? First thing is their name. Our name is all the way at the bottom. John 3:16. And then it has the verse say, "Oh, grave, where's thy power of death? Where's thy sting?" Because I'm not afraid of death. Death is going to be the greatest parachute jump. It's going to be there's always an element of fear when you go out that door, but the drop zone is going to be awesome. And we're going to hurl ourselves into the darkness in faith. And so we don't live our lives in fear. We live our lives in preparation. And that's the great power of being Christians in a nation where we got the liberty to protect ourselves. I've got uh, I've got weapons up on the wall here, and they're all gifts. And I've got a card on my website about the giving of a weapon and how it implies your trust in them, your desire to make the world a better place by giving this tool in the hands of a virtuous person. But it says, in the end, remember, you are the weapon. Everything else is just a tool. And so we're God's faithful sheepdogs. Yeah.
So that kind of gives me a question here, and it's preparing yourself is pretty much all we can do. Our nonprofit focuses on four pillars: education, health, finances, and communication. Now, it's a little bit different of a weapon, but I feel like the better you can communicate, whether it's how you're feeling or you're perceiving when you come into a crazy leftist that has these ideas, and you can actually communicate your ideas in a way, you're going to be a more of a weapon. But
I gotta show you something here now. This is I apologize here.
no, no worries.
This is the giving of a weapon card with the code I just told you. On the back side, it says your mind is the ultimate weapon if it's loaded with knowledge.
I love it.
And
I
that's
love
what
it.
you're saying.
I love it.
Great minds think alike. That's
Yes,
what you're saying.
I would think your mind's a lot greater than mine. But what can homeschooling parents do to you're a great speaker. Obviously,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
speak in front of hundreds of people. You know, what can parents do besides giving them the information, but to cultivate a individual that is confident in communicating what they want, but more importantly, what they stand for?
I tell you, it's all about practice.
Okay.
When we first started teaching at West Point, we taught two 50-minute classes a day, and we were exhausted. And we said, this is crazy. We're in the prime of our lives, we're in peak physical condition, and two 50-minute classes were exhausted. By the end of the second semester, we were teaching four 50-minute classes, and it was no big deal. And the point is to just, do as much as you can. I teach 8 hours a day, sometimes three, four, five, two different times, 6 days a week in
Wow.
six different cities. I teach and travel, and people say, "Oh, you must be exhausted." No, it's just another day at the office. A lot of pastors, they present, an hour or maybe two a week, and they're exhausted, and good for them. That's fine. But if you do it every day, if you do it a lot, seek every teaching presentation on, you can. The Rotary and the Kiwanis and the Lions are always open for speakers, and every opportunity you get to speak is an opportunity to craft your skills and to craft your ability. I've been on the road all these years, and it just one of the greatest joys is that it just gets better and better, and I get better at doing what I do. And so I would tell you that the key thing is to get as much practice as possible and to become comfortable with it. And there's no good ways, how do you get to be a good runner? By a lot of running, there's no shortcut. How do you get to be a good teacher? By a lot of teaching. How do you get to be a good preacher? A lot of preaching. And so seek as many opportunities as you can. I would say within homeschooling that you never truly understand something until you teach it. And so, to whatever degree you can have your homeschool students teaching the other students, to whatever degree you can have them presenting to each other, that's one of the best things you could possibly do.
That's beautiful because my brother and I were currently building a course for young kids who want to be in business. And what we started realizing is, we live in this day of information, and we take it in, but we never ever do anything with this. So what we decided was maybe making a thing where when it comes, let's say, a study about sleep, having one of the kids research sleep, prepare a presentation for the family, and then give that presentation to the family to not only work on the communication and all that, but it's also going to engrave that information into their mind a
Yes,
whole lot more.
yes.
When it comes to them, let's say a fear of public speaking, I know you're going to say practice. Would you say that going back to what we said earlier, getting to the point where understanding that fear you're facing is normal? Because I personally believe that if you want to be successful, you got to communicate. And if whether in business, if you're selling something, maybe you're going to meet with investors, public speaking is one of the greatest fears that most people face.
Yeah.
Would you think them presenting to their family, or maybe having them go out and teach other kids, or maybe even putting together somewhere where they present to their friends' families, would that help with getting them comfortable?
Absolutely.
It
Yeah,
would. Okay.
100%. I mean, it's really, in many ways, the only possible solution. How to get to be a better running by running.
Yep.
There's no shortcut. How do you build your muscles by exercising? There's no shortcut in that. But it comes back around to the baseline idea. Am I the hunter or the hunted? Do I live my life in confidence, or do I live my life in fear? Do it. Yeah, and again, I growing up in the martial arts, military background, a shooting background, a hunting background. Those are all different ways to prepare you. I've spent a lifetime studying combat, and I believe the single best way to prepare for combat is to hunt. And if you don't hunt, there's other ways to go about that. But I really believe, as sheepdogs and as homeschoolers, one of the very best set of skills we give our kids is hunting. And they should clean their game from the youngest days. And we got this critter, and we say this is the liver and this is the heart and these are the kidneys, and you got the same stuff inside you, and you smell the same. And then we put it on the grill right now, and we put some good barbecue sauce on it, and boom, that stuff inside that body was food in your stomach right now.
Mm.
The first time you see what's inside a living creature, some terrible crime scene or some horrible accident scene, would set you up for failure. You should have been exposed to that from your youngest days to go out and gut a chicken and bring it in for chicken dinner. You should have been exposed to those things from your youngest days and be the hunter and not the hunted. So there's many ways to not be the hunted, but the best way is to actually grow up harvesting your own protein. And
Which,
that's one of the things we could do.
no, and that's a beautiful thing. We had a previous interview with a man named AJ, and he talked about the same thing, that when you're doing that, some people want to shy away from it because they would rather just go to the store. But you don't understand that that's actually it's a sacrifice, and reframing your mindset around it is going to allow you that's a blessing that you're giving yourself compared to just like you said coming up to a deer that's been hit by a car. It's this brutal scene. If you're exposed to it, you're kind of already you're around it, you already understand it. It's not gruesome. Now you understand that's just a part of life. I have those same things inside of me.
Right.
I kind of want to go back a little bit to the sheep and the sheepdog thing. The martial arts, I'm a huge proponent of. The sports, like you said, but bringing it into being confident in your values. I feel like right now in a world we live in, we're getting told, hey, these should be your values. And if they're not, you're a bad person, let's say.
Yeah.
When it comes to the next generation of kids, how can we really just engrave into them to find their voice, to understand that, hey, this is what my family stands for. I am not going to bend the knee for it. Like, how do we get that younger generation as homeschooling families? What can we do to really just inspire our kids to be confident in the values that their household supports? Because for me, I feel like it starts in the house.
Yeah.
Strong house, strong neighbors house, strong community equals strong states equals strong nations, you know? So what can we do as homeschoolers to just really just get our kids to understand that when you stand for something, you are the hunter. You're not going to just roll over on your back like you like to say.
Here's the most important thing in the universe. It really did happen. Jesus really did die on the cross. He really did come back. Doubting Thomas really did touch the wound in his side. Now, here's how we know. Because 11 of the 12 disciples died for their faith. Now, the disciples of the disciples died for their faith. And that's straight up Roman history. The disciples died for their faith. You can't prove that. Well, the disciples of the disciples died, and that's straight up Roman history. Nobody can deny it. And then their disciples died, and their disciples died. Men don't die for a lie. Today, Christianity is by far the largest religion on the planet for a reason. There's never been anything like it in human history. The whole Old Testament is prophecy of Jesus. And then Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. It really did happen. And then ultimately in 333 AD, that after 2.5 centuries of murdering Christians, the Roman Empire said, okay, it really did happen. We believe you. I mean, they didn't want to die. The martyrs, they didn't want to die. They said, look, just admit you made it all up, admit it didn't really happen, and we won't kill you. And they said, no, it really did happen. And men don't die for a lie. And then the Roman Empire became a Christian empire. This is the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, for 1,000 years. One of the longest, greatest empires in history, 1,000 years, was a Christian empire. And today, Christianity is the greatest nation, is far and away the most widespread because the single most amazing thing that happened in human history. Nothing even remotely like it. The prophecy of the Old Testament, the fulfillment in the New Testament, and the fact that a man really did come back from the dead, and he told us our mission is to love God and love people. A new commandment I give you, to love one another as I have loved you. Boom. This is the greatest revolution in human history. And so I would tell you the answer to your question, the most important thing in the universe lies into this fundamental understanding that it really did happen. Now, faith is a choice. You can say, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. I don't think anybody goes to their death 100% confident. There are people, but I think it's like jumping out of that airplane as a paratrooper. There's always this element of fear. There's all this element of doubt, and you go out that plane. The craziest thing in the universe is a bunch of people jumping out of a plane in the middle of the night. It just defies all human logic. Just hurl yourself into the darkness. A plane full of idiots who hurl themselves into the darkness. That's what it's going to be like to die. And as a Christian, but you got to have your chute, and you got to
Yep.
do what the jump master tells you to. You know what I'm saying? And the drop zone is going to be awesome. There's going to be people on that drop zone, but you got to go out that plane, and you got to hurl yourself into the darkness in faith. But I tell you, the foundation of everything is what I just said. It really did happen. That's the foundation of Christianity. That's the foundation of our faith. It gives us power to face death, that Jesus came back from the dead. And we can't ever lose track of that. It's the most important thing in the universe. It is a fact. And it cannot be denied. And it lays the foundation for all of the confidence and the faith that rolls from it. And remember, the man came to Jesus, asked him to heal his child. And Jesus said, if you have enough faith, anything's possible. He said, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. Boom. Jesus did what we asked him to do. I think there's two things we should be praying for every day. My wife and I hold hands and pray for each other every night. And two things we should pray for in particular is pray for more faith and pray for more love. Our mission is to love God and love people, to love others as you love yourself. That new commandment I give you, to love one another as I have loved you. So pray for more love. You go to the source of all love and ask for love. If your mission was to plant explosives on a bridge, you'd go to the ammunition supply point, you draw explosives. Well, our mission is to love. So go to the source of all love and ask for more love. And that love will empower us. And so that lays a foundation. And that really is kind of the heart of my book on spiritual combat. And to lay that foundation of understanding that all of our strength flows from that. And we should never neglect that. And we should always understand that. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it also it's something that as homeschooling families that we have the power because they stripped God from the school. They've even now stripped the Pledge of Allegiance out of school.
Yeah.
So it's something that as homeschooling families that we can focus on,
Yes.
which is so simple, maybe
Yes.
not easy all the time, but it's still so simple to do. And it allows us to, like you said, it allows us, or we, not like you said, like how I'm saying, we have an opportunity to do it, so we might as well make a point to do it. And it's one thing I do see with a lot of homeschooling families. And it's one of the reasons a lot of people chose to homeschool. Now, what can insight maybe for the world their kids are going to face in the future? What insights do you think from maybe your military background? And I know you kind of want to go into it where the the left they surrender, and when we see, you know, Islamic terrorists and all that, they're known for hiding within the left to gain control. So, what can we do as a nation, as families, to prepare ourselves from that violence? I know you said you want to touch on it, so I really want you to go as deep as you would like to here.
Well, I'm doing some work in the very near future with just a major Jewish podcaster with huge numbers of followers on what can we draw from the Cold War to look at this new fight. It's kind of a Cold War 2.0, containment. And just not that we should examine all possibilities and then apply them. And I tell you, one of the things that was a part of the Cold War was deterrence, nuclear deterrence. Didn't have to like nukes, but if the Russians had nukes and we didn't, we'd lose. Game over. We had to have nukes. Today, deterrence, and we had civil defense to mitigate the impact of their nukes. But today, what civil defense means and what deterrence means is being armed and being trained. And I think at the heart of this new deterrence is, what Israel learned from the October 7th abominations, this horrific mass murders, rape, and slaughter on October 7th. What Israel learned is we've got to have more armed people ready and trained, ready to go. The answer to the threat is not to take away civil liberties. The answer is to provide more liberty. And we've really had a movement with shall issue concealed carry across the nation. We've got the right. I teach a lot of house of worship security teams nationwide, and I do a one-day presentation that I really focus on creating a passion to protect. And then I point them to Keith Graves' Christian warrior training is really all the nuts and bolts. Lay that biblical foundation, that passion to protect, the nuts and bolts. But when we talk about that, I teach them, it starts with praying with your head up, your eyes open. There's nothing in the Bible that says we've got to close our eyes. Now, it helps you concentrate, it helps you focus. But I tell them, I've had the honor to train the Secret Service. When the president has a head bowed in prayer, does the Secret Service have their head bowed? No. Well, I am my family's Secret Service. I am blessed to live in a nation where my family has the same armed protection the president does, and I'm good. I really recommend that the martial art of the firearm, Jiu-Jitsu, and it's really evolving into something pretty cool. We are the people of the gun. This is our martial art.
Mhm.
But I am my family's Secret Service. So pray with your head up and your eyes open and be alert, because this is the time when the evil one will attack for those who are the sheepdogs, and we protect our flock, and the sheepdog is a head up while the flock is a head down. We talk about living the life of the sheepdog, of the protector, and choosing to follow that path. And there's a lot of nuts and bolts that we can apply. But it begins with making the option to pray with your head up and your eyes open, and to be the sheepdog, and to be the protector, and to carry the tools from the youngest days, to make that conscious decision that I am the hunter and not the hunted. I control my destiny, and in the end, I know to live as Christ and to die as gain. I know what waits for me on the other side, and there's great peace and power and confidence that comes with that. And so the martyrs said, "You can kill me if you want. I don't want that." The Romans invented all kinds of weird, painful, terrible ways to die, just to try to have people say, "No, okay, we made it all up." No, they wouldn't do that because it really did happen. And so nobody's asking us to die for our faith. Just stand up and speak for your faith, and stand up and have the courage to confess your faith. That's why, after On Combat and On Killing, Marine Corps Commandants required reading, 1 million copies sold altogether, both those books. It was so important to write on spiritual combat and give it to the Lord, because ultimately that's the most important thing of all. So that's kind of a convoluted answer. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
It does, and it kind of got me to it brought up another question in my head here that, you know, anytime there's any kind of gun violence, the left's answer is we need to take away the guns. But we can look in Europe, they take away the guns, the knife crimes go up.
Yes.
How important do you think it is teaching gun safety from an early age? Because I personally think that it is another thing that should be included in our school. Is it
Well, I wrote a book, the Sheepdog Kids book. And the cover of this book is from an actual, yeah, the cover is really fun. We're going to be doing an online piece, but it's an Iraqi soldier behind, an Iraqi boy hiding behind an American soldier. It's the cover for the book. And then
wow.
in the book, there's a scene, this scene in the book. And then, but then the follow-on book is Why Mommy Carries a Gun.
Love it.
And,
I
and,
love
and, and what I tell everybody is, look, you got kids and you got guns. This can be a tragic combination. So educate the kids. And we talk about Second Amendment, and we talk about safe storage, and we talk about the 4 universal gun safety laws, and we talk about famous quotes throughout history. And in the back of the book, we got famous sheepdogs throughout history. We got Annie Oakley and Alvin York. And of course, they're all sheepdogs. Alvin York is a Yorkie, and holding a 1911. We got Audie Murphy and Eleanor Roosevelt, who was her own bodyguard, always carried a gun, was her own bodyguard, and we go on and we say, who's your hero, and put the picture in here, or draw a picture in here, and this book has the 4 universal gun safety laws, and that's such a great question. I wrote a book.
it. Well,
I
it
wrote
is
a book.
too, because I think also that we are a nation that, we're allowed to have our guns, and I guess depending on the state determines the ability of which you can kind of carry it. I personally believe that violent crime would go down, or at least would deter, if everyone knew that the person walking next to them was carrying a weapon.
The
It's
data,
just, it
the data is
seems
clear.
to make it
Absolutely clear.
clear.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to it, do you think that there's specifically a certain age that we should maybe introduce this, or is it the earlier the better? What are your kind of
Well, I
viewpoints?
think when it comes to gun safety, the earlier the better.
Mm,
Find a gun, stop, don't touch. The basic fundamentals as a
yep.
find a gun, stop, don't touch. It's in the book. The 4 universal gun safety laws. These are the foundation that everybody should know from the youngest days. It's like driving a car. It's a responsibility that to be taken with care and caution. We observe we learn to drive a car from our youngest age. We observe our parents and we watch them. Are they modeling good, safe behavior? We hope so. And that's our goal, is to model safe behavior when we carry, and a gun is on my body, or it's in a secure location, or beside me. And so it's a matter of teaching from the youngest days, and then going to the range at a young age and understanding these things and taking away the mystery, and teaching the value of it, and then hunting at the youngest age, and seeing, well, here's what this weapon does, and then we honor this creature that we kill. We look at this living creature, and we took this creature's life so it will be food on our table. How many people honor the cow that you got your steak from? You get your hamburger. How many people honor the cow? But when we hunt and when we kill a creature, there's a sense of sadness, and a sense of this creature gave its life for me to survive. And of course, there's scriptural applications that we can go into too. But that whole dynamic of being in tune with nature, and being of guns and hunting and being the hunter. We're so blessed to live in a nation where we can do these things. And it's a beautiful gift to give to our children. That I believe right behind, of course, that scriptural foundation, it really did happen. The next best things we can do are things like the martial arts, and things like hunting, and gun safety and gun security, and making the decision to be the hunter and not the hunted. It doesn't mean you're actively hunting. It just means, are you doing the things you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones? Do you live your life in fear, or do you live your life in preparation?
All right, before we get into your final thoughts, so this is just something, and maybe you can kind of help me understand. We see these mass shootings happening in schools, right?
Stop
And
there,
then,
Dave. Let's stop right there. Shooting is an Olympic sport.
Mhm.
Shooting is our constitutionally protected right. Shooting baskets wins millions of dollars. Shooting a movie, shooting a TV show wins Emmys and Oscars. In every other context, the word shooting is positive. When do we use the word shooting to refer to a criminal act? See, we've been brainwashed.
We've been
We don't
brainwashed.
even realize. We don't even realize every time the left uses the word shooting to refer to a criminal act. Shooting's not a criminal act. Shooting is an Olympic sport. It's a constantly protected right. It should anger you, and we don't even see it. See, it should anger you every time the word shooting is applied to a criminal act. So start now. You can start policing yourself and start being aware of that. Because we see these mass murders, we see these murders.
Okay. So my idea is, and I'm sure it's been thought of before, but we have all of these men coming home from war, being in the service. They understand everything you need to know. Why have we as a nation not taken soldiers and put them into schools to protect and the kids that are there? It's not like you have to worry
Yeah,
about training them.
yeah,
It's somebody that already loves their country. They were willing to die for those kids that are at that school already by going off somewhere and fighting.
yeah.
What I just seems so simple to me about to kind of push that away. If I was a crazy person and I knew there were 10 ex Navy SEAL men walking around this school.
Well, let's back up. This is such an important subject. Let's talk about that. We go back to my book on killing.
Okay.
Now, throughout history, we take our young men, we give them state-of-the-art tools to kill people,
Mm-hmm.
state-of-the-art training to kill people. We send them to distant lands. We give them years of practice at killing people. We bring them home. What is to stop them from using their skills on their own people? And every warrior society has found the same solution: discipline, discipline, discipline. Every warrior society had distinctive haircuts and distinctive uniforms. If you can't submit your will to authority about like how you wear your hair, you're not some freaking flaky fashion model. You're a soldier. This is how you wear your hair. Boom, Roger out. If you can't submit your will to authority about inconsequential things, then give up on expecting them to submit the will to authority on being trained to kill and never ever use the logistics. The people learn logistics, they learned electronics, they come home and use those skills. But the people who learned to kill did not come home. The returning veteran of every war is far less likely to commit a violent crime than a non-veteran because of
Mm.
discipline. So first understand your basic premise is very valid, but take it a step further. Uh, in Utah has had armed educators in virtually every school since the Columbine massacre. Not a shooting, it's a massacre, right?
Massacre. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. And Utah's had armed and basically in Utah, concealed carry in the school is the same as concealed carry in the mall. Why would the law change in the school? So we've had armed Dr. John Lott is an American treasure, great man. And Dr. John Lott had an article in Real Clear Politics that there has never been. Now, we've had armed educators in Ohio and Florida and Texas. That's the answer to the Parkland massacre was armed educators. The answer to the Uvalde massacre is armed educators. And of course, Utah's been doing it for over a quarter of a century, 100% success. John Lott says there has never been a gun homicide of a child in an American school with armed educators. Never once. There was a double homicide in the parking lot in a school in Utah after hours. There was a suicide, but there's never been a gun homicide of an American child in a school with armed educators. Now,
Wow.
in the Sandy Hook massacre, the first one that died, two classrooms of first graders slaughtered. First one that died was Dawn Hoxprung, the principal who charged the killer. Unarmed woman just charged the killer. What did she think she was going to do? In the Covenant School massacre in Nashville, the first one to die was the principal, unarmed woman who just, no, the second one to die. Janitor died in the hallway, and then this lady died charging the killer. What did she think she was going to do? But it's in their genes to die for their children. So I had an elementary school principal tell me one time. She said, I will die for my children tomorrow. Give me something besides my keys in my hands when that day comes. Now, it's in their genes. They will die for those children. I will die for my children tomorrow. Give me something besides my keys in my hand when that day comes. So to take a step further, yeah, just having armed military in our schools, but arm the educators, 100%
Love it.
success. We don't even know that it's being done nationwide with 100% success because the media is not reporting it. We're blind and to think, use the word shooting to refer to a criminal action. And we don't even know the data that isn't being reported is mind-numbing. And so, yes, your basic premise is not just valid, it's been proven with 100% success to arm the citizens in our schools. Why would concealed carry in the school be any different than concealed carry in the street or the mall or anywhere else? Why would the
Shouldn't.
law change in the school? Yeah, and so when you confront that, you see that it works and there's a model already in place to validate exactly what you're saying.
I love it. I love it. I never thought about that actually, because I'm the teachers, and it makes it a whole lot simpler. All right, before we hop off here, is there anything else you want to touch on? This is like your time just to talk
Oh,
about whatever you
we've
want.
covered it, David. We've covered it. It's been such a great opportunity. I'll mention this on my social media. We'll put the word out.
I appreciate it.
But just know that you're on the side of the angels. Just understand that we're in the end, everybody's going to die physically.
Mhm.
In the end, every nation will fall over my dead body. But in the end, eternity continues. And keep your eye on the big picture. When I tell all my first responders, I tell them, you're going to see terrible, terrible things every day. And you can't help but ask the question, how could a loving God allow these terrible things to happen? And the answer is very simple. Your loving God would not make you his puppet. The evil one promises freedom and gives you bondage. But have you ever heard if you truly love something, let it go. If it comes back, it's really yours. That's how much God loves us. He loves us enough to let us make our own decisions. And that means a lot of people make really bad decisions. A lot of really bad things happen. You say, God, why don't you do something? He said, I did. I sent you. He's put us here, armed with love, in a nation where we have the freedom to carry the tools to protect ourselves and others. Educate our children, preserve our nation, believe in who you are and believe in what you do. And God bless you and God bless America.
I love it. Thank you so much, sir. This has been an absolute pleasure of mine. Definitely one of my favorite ones we've ever done. Um, Beth, I know I didn't give you a chance to talk today. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I took a bunch of notes. I
That's how
have a
you know
lot of
that.
notes.
As a teacher, it's the highest honor. It's highest honor when you see somebody taking notes.
Oh, thank
It
you.
really is.
Thank
So
you.
it's truly been iron sharpens iron for me. It's been a two-way street. Praise God.
And thank you so much. Thank you
Yes, thank
so
you.
much. And once you hop off here, we're going to record your intro. And if there's anything we could ever do, if you could include to us all the like the links or where the parents can buy those books.
Mhm. Be
I
Well,
great.
want
my website
to
is
website.
grossmanontruth.com.
Okay.
Grossmanontruth.com. The truth on killing, the truth on combat, the truth on spiritual combat, grossmanontruth.com. But we'll put that in the show notes. And all my stuff is there and all my links are there. My social media, you can find Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman on social media. We're posting a lot of stuff there and we'll be doing a lot more in the near future. And we'll post this one in there and
Heck
just
yeah.
get people listening to the powerful, wonderful things that y'all are doing. Praise God.
We're trying our best, man. We really are. All right, sir. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Tell Charlie to keep being the cute little thing that he is, man.
All right. God bless you. God
God
bless you.
bless. Have a good day.